Hi, welcome back to Election Central Brantford. We're here with our Libertarian candidate, Rob. And the reason why I call him Rob, welcome my friend again.
Yes.
The reason why I call him Rob is because Rob, I've known Rob to do tons of elections. I've always known Rob to be out there doing something in the community. But I've known Rob like forever. I feel like I've known you forever, my friend. Right. And I feel like you've been in the political scene in Brantford, in Brant, forever.
It feels like I've been in campaign mode for my first election was 2007, and people don't see in the public, they don't see the prior to an election call. You're in campaign mode for a year prior. So 2007 election, I was actually campaigning 2006. So we're approaching 2016. So that means almost 10 years of campaigning as a candidate here locally.
Yeah, as a candidate.
Right.
But like you've been involved.
Correct.
How many levels? Where have you been?
When I was a kid, I was a campaigner for the Phil Gillies campaign and other conservative candidates. I went through the ranks of different parties. I joined the NDP. I was there for a short time. I didn't completely agree with all their principles and policies. I left that party. I sought out, went with a family party here in Ontario.
Right.
I had some differences with philosophy there as well. I found the Libertarians to be exactly the right fit for me. And, I've served as a campaign director. I've served as a candidate trainer.
Yeah.
A candidate for 10 years. Even in this election, I've had many candidates from other parties call me and ask me about elections laws and election finances and stuff. And it's weird that, I'm coaching other candidates, but it's nice that when out of all those country, they seek out you.
Yeah.
So that means a lot to me that, even my own party, when some of the newer candidates will come to me and they'll ask about my experiences with road trips and even collecting signatures, everyone does that differently. Yeah. And I find what works for me, and I might only have one or two people that refuse to sign the nomination process, whereas some of my opponents and some of the other candidates around the country have more difficulty. So it's nice to relate to them and be able to help guide them through the process.
Yeah, I really get that. So what do you think is the biggest misconception about the public and libertarians?
Well, one of the issues that I think we see, number one, is when the public, they don't understand that, one of the most common things we get is libertarians don't care about the poor.
Right.
Or who will build the roads.
Right.
Being legally blind, what good are roads to me anyway? But the philosophy is there where we do care about the poor, and we know that there's overwhelming evidence that in essence big government restricts and controls a lot of that stuff, and they actually foster the poor. When we look at spending more money actually raises pricing in our community, that's a key contributor to poverty. We need more of a hand up and less of a handout. When I speak to people, one of the biggest things is where can they go or what can they do to sustain life a little bit better? Yeah. And I always say to them, you have a choice. You have a choice to let government guide you through this process and continue to tax you and regulate you, or you can go with the libertarians where you're free to do this. An example of which is if you wanted to create a business tomorrow, the government comes along and says, good for you. Now you'll need this license and that fee and belong to that agency and that regulatory agency. And by the time you've gone through it, you've got 20 different needs to meet. Whereas libertarians will say, good for you, now go do it. Because we end those restrictions and allow you to make not allow, but provide the opportunity for you to support yourself without government interference. And government, I always say 60% of small business goes out of business in the first year, not because of competition, not because of finances, it's because of this government umbrella of red tape. And if we remove that umbrella, business can succeed.
Yeah.
So.
And then, like you said earlier in our conversation, more money in the public's pocket, allows more happiness with the public.
Right.
They spend more money, they give more money.
Right.
And
right. When we look at this, and the last provincial election, I sat in this very room and I talked about how more money in your pocket. And during that election, people looked at me like, "What are you talking about? More money in your pocket?" Now I listen to candidates right across the nation, and they keep talking about more money in the pockets. And I'm thinking, did I coach the entire country? But
you probably did.
But it is true, because the more money we have, the more money we can spend into the local economy.
Right.
And this creates product and service demand. And when there's product and service demand, businesses have to be created or expanded to meet that demand. This creates jobs, and that's what we need in this community. Libertarians, we would end corporate welfare, and what that means for a local grower is they can actually compete with the big guys now, because a big corporate farmer on the other side of the country will have to pay an extraordinary shipping cost to our local grocery stores, whereas a local potato farmer has always been excluded. Now he can actually contribute to the local market. In order to meet that demand, he's going to have to go out and hire 20 or 30 farmers, workers. And so it's a benefit directly to this community is to end that corporate welfare. One of the things that I really get troubled about is the handouts. When we look at immigration, and recently there was an immigration debate here in which I was included and then excluded 2 hours before the debate. And one of those things that I could contribute to is, right now we need to bring home our troops to concentrate on national defense. Strengthen our immigration process to allow a better screening process for criminal or fraudulent activity abroad. And then, once they're here, in order to have a prosperous community, we need to expand our population. So they're welcome to come here and work, but this aid and assistance, once they're here, would end with a libertarian government. We don't buy Canadian citizens a car or help contribute to buying a house. Why should immigrants get that? So not one group should benefit over another. And I think in this election, people are starting to catch on to that.
Well, coming from parents that were immigrants, I know that my parents came to this country with nothing, and
then they worked for it.
And they worked for it, yeah.
Right. My grandma said that when she came here, she had to have $30 in her pocket. She had to have a job within 30 days, and she needed a roof over her head within 3 days. And she needed to meet those requirements. And it was difficult, but yes, she did that. And she's a Canadian citizen, and she's worked all her life here and contributed to Canadian society. And that's key.
Is that what's your nationalities?
That's my grandma is Polish from my wife's side.
Hey!
And my national for my own family. I mean, obviously Ferguson Scottish. And then there's a lot of Mohawk in my family as well. So
I never knew that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool.
So I mean, there's a mixed broad. If you stuck all nationalities in a blender and you blended it up, you'd get me. So,
So you're the people's man.
And I always say in elections, I can relate to anyone, and it doesn't matter the issue, whether it be discrimination, and that's why I love and I have a passion for libertarianism. Is I can relate to that discrimination. And in order to end discrimination, whether it be age, sex, race, ethnic, national origin, mental, physical disability, or whatever, in order to end that, we have to end all forms of it. So regardless of political opinion, we need to end all forms. And once we end all forms, we can actually live in a better place.
Wow, well said. And that's the whole thing of Mental Health Awareness Week that myself and Matt work on, that we want to end the conversations of, they call it a stigma. I don't like that conversation, but, I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
And to be excluded from a debate a week ago based on and you listen to those questions that were fielded that night was about equality and rights and freedoms and liberty. Well, why wouldn't the Liberty candidate be invited to that? And it's starting to get around to where I'm invited and included more than I'm excluded.
Right.
We recently had an agricultural debate, and I did not receive 1,000 votes in the last federal election, so I was excluded. Of course, we didn't field a Libertarian candidate in Brantford. That's probably why I didn't get 1,000 votes. But it's a private event. We have to respect the organizers for their mandates. And but I do think I would have had an impact in both of those debates.
Well, Say it to the people. What would you say right now?
Again, with
you had an
the
opportunity to speak there.
I already commented on the agricultural,
Yeah.
and when we look at the equality of rights and freedoms for all citizens, whether you
Yes.
be landed or national, we look at native issues, and right now,
Yes.
Land disputes has always been a problem,
Yep.
an issue, and our second line of our national anthem says our home and native land. I didn't write that,
I know.
but it solves native land disputes.
I know.
100%. And the other element of our national anthem that we can apply to libertarianism is we stand on guard for thee. It does not say we will go off to the other parts of the world and force North American values and for thee. It says we stand on guard for thee. And that means our military and our defenses will stand on guard for thee. So libertarians, again, we go back to that basic, bring home our troops to protect our borders. And,
It's looking inward.
yeah, exactly. We need to protect what we have already. And,
Right.
and when we look at C-51 and we look at the infrastructure of that bill that continues to violate rights and freedoms, well, Canada was founded on protecting rights and freedoms, but yet this bill exists that, we should be going after the terrorists and not our own citizens. We call this a fish net or a blanket effect. We throw out this net and we catch everything that moves, and we hold up one case and we say, hey, we're justified. We found this one terrorist, but we've destroyed hundreds of thousands of lives in the process. So there has to be a better way.
There
and,
has to be.
we go back to allowing law enforcement to actually do their investigations rather than infringing on our citizens, our law-abiding citizens. That would be the direction we need to go.
How would it look for you to be MP of Brant? How would that look?
Well, the reality is a libertarian government, minority or majority, may be unlikely in this particular election, but a libertarian MP, that is plausible and realistic. So you could still have your socialism, if you will, and have a libertarian MP.
Right.
I would go to Ottawa. I would oppose any bill that infringed on rights and freedoms. I would fight for lower tax. I would fight for more personal liberties being returned to the individual.
Right.
So, in that sense, not too many people would oppose that. They would want the property rights and an official who would fight for property rights, and fight for native rights and fight for the rights and freedoms. And so you could have a libertarian MP who would go and have that mission of fighting for less government and more rights and freedoms to the individual.
And still be a voice for the
And I've
constituents.
always said this. I want to be a strong voice. That's why I get into politics. And
you do have a strong voice. I've heard you screaming.
And it's a matter of being focused on the campaigns. And we look at my opponents here and party wise, and they're all over broad. And I look at all of their platforms and I see spending. In order to spend that kind of money, taxes are going to go up, cost of goods and services are going to go up, small business will go out of business, and more temps will be created. I want something more. I want to go a different way. I want to be on the other scope. So when we look at my opponents, and there's 5 of us technically running here now, which could end today with the nominations, could be more. So we look at all my opponents and their parties, and I'm the only alternative to this big spending cap. And people are starting to see that,
So you were talking earlier about how you were down near the casino talking to somebody about that. So, share that conversation, because I think that's a value added.
When we were by the casino and we stopped to talk to some of the picketers there, and I said, well, I want to hear your point of it. And the protester said, well, we really don't know. Our union's not telling us the full story. And I said, well, this is one of the things of unions that is a downcline, but it's very typical. They talked about how benefits. And I said, well, although healthcare is a provincial issue, I said on a flip side of this, what we need to do is open that market. So, instead of having to fight for benefits every year or two, you have had that included in your private benefits. And the gentleman said, yes, this is what we want. And I said, well, that's libertarian. And he stomped his foot, and he's holding this union sign, and he says, well, I guess I'm libertarian. And I said, well, yes, on October 19th, I asked for your support, your vote, and your trust. And that's what it's about. It's really about trust. Trust is earned, not given away. And I think that, I think that I'm the person that that can go to Ottawa and earn that trust even more.
Yeah, I got that. So what else do you want to say to our people before we go into the questions? What do you want to say to the audience about you running, as a federal candidate? What do you want to tell them?
One of the key issues, again, is being legally blind. I faced, systematic discrimination. I have faced...
I'm sorry that you had to do that.
I have faced that.
That's not cool.
And
not especially what we have in our town and what we have between the W. Ross McDonald School, stuff they're building in Paris for the blind and the deaf and all that. Like that.
And
that's fantastic.
And I can relate to that. And people often ask, and that's one of our questions today. We'll get in more depth about, but I just think that's key and paramount is that I can relate to people.
Yeah.
And I'll often candidates get, there's no one there for us. Well, I want to change that. Mm-hmm. I want to be the person that everyone can relate to as well. So it goes both ways.
Exactly.
So I don't want to be an MP who strictly sticks to the party principles and philosophies.
Right.
I want to be here for my community with the policies and philosophies. So I want to serve this community, and I want to give them a strong voice.
All right, I hear you on that, and good for you. Thank you for being here. All right, well, we're going to go into first question. So, what inspired you to run?
Again, it's one of those things where you want to make a difference. You truly do. And that's probably one of the biggest questions we get at municipally, provincially, federally as a candidate is why you run. And again, it's because you want to make a difference based on your life experiences, based on your political experiences. You want to make a difference in a positive direction to businesses, to the community as a whole. And I believe, based on my life experiences, that I am the best choice for this community on October 19th.
I hear you on that. Excellent. All right, so what do you want your legacy to be if elected?
And this is a fun one because, if this was pro wrestling, I'd be Steve Austin in Ottawa because, it's one of those things where, you don't notice all the conservative candidates or members. You don't notice all the NDP members, but you notice the green. Because they stood out. Yeah. A Libertarian will stand out even more. and the reality is we can have a Libertarian MP somewhere in the country. Why not here? Exactly. It's a funny story. My wife's grandmother says to me the other day, she says, "Robert, I had a dream about you." And I said, "What?" And she's got to understand, she's Polish as well, so she has a strong accent. And I said, "Well, what's the dream?" She says, "You came in here and you said, 'We want a seat.' And I have no idea what that means." So, but the reality is it is possible. And we have some members, some candidates spending large money on the other side of the country. And I'm not going to be one of those that spend a lot of money. I want to control spending, and that's what I'm proposing if elected is I will control overspending. And so to me, when you overspend, this election is the most costly in Canadian history.
Longest.
So how can any of those parties, even our conservatives, talk about being fiscally responsible, but yet call this election so early on? They're going to need to make up this money and to pay for this election. So whoever wins the government position has to pay for this election, and that doesn't look good for any of them. So what we need to do is reduce this overspending and reduce government size and give government a role, and I want to be part of that.
Well said, my friend. Well said. I feel you on that. Good. All right. So, third question. What can you say to encourage people to get out and vote?
I've said it before a year ago. It's when you don't vote, you're saying you're happy the way it is. And a lot of people, they just don't vote because they don't think someone's there for them. They don't think their vote matters. It does matter because it might shape the local scene. It could shape a provincial scene. It could shape a federal scene. Yep. So your vote really does matter. When we look locally and we say that a candidate could be between 200 and 500 votes difference and completely different platforms, your vote really does matter. Yep. It might not matter for electing a prime minister as an individual, but locally it does matter. And people need to come out and vote. exercise that democratic right.
That's right.
And come out and participate. I've had people say, I'm going to show up and mark nothing on my ballot. And I said, good for you. At least you showed up.
Yep.
You know, and you know, I mean, if you're going to throw your vote away, you know, I mean, it's your right and freedom. But, if, you know, showing up and being part of the process is better than staying at home, being a non-voter, and being part of the problem. And we need solutions and resolutions, and we need people to be more involved because, you know, parties get their platforms from the community.
Yes.
And it's just not picked out of thin air. So, you know, we need people to get involved in elections. We need people to get involved in between elections. Locally here, we've just started a riding association for the Libertarians here on a federal level. We call it the Brantford Liberty Association. So again, people can join these riding associations. And I'm not going to plug my other guys, my opponents, but yeah, if you see your opinion being with one of the other guys, join their riding association. Yeah. Be an active voice. You know, it helps develop the platforms and the campaigns and the philosophies. You can get involved in more ways than one.
So with all your experience, everything that you've been through in all your time of helping elections, working elections, being a candidate, and all the different levels that you've experienced, right? Because you know, provincially, municipally, all that kind of stuff. What is it that shows up that what do you think is that thing that stops them from wanting to get out of the chair and into the ballot box?
I think it's just that opinion that they don't trust government. And you know, government says one thing and they do another. And a prime example of which is the NDP have this plank this time around of a $15 minimum wage. It's a federal minimum wage. And when we look at that and we say, okay, you have to be a federal employee or a subcontract of the government to qualify. So they haven't lied. It's just a misleading way of doing it. And people are tired of that. They want to read a platform. They want to understand what the candidate says and be truthful. And you know, I see that that's one of the biggest burdens is the misleading planks in parties' platforms. If candidates can't figure it out, then the public's not going to figure it out.
Well, that's exactly it. And like you're so involved with community involvement, getting people out there. You're the flyer guy. You know, it's like to me, you're always talking. You're always with somebody talking about something. It's like you would be the person I would go to find out like what is it we can get. To get them out of the chairs.
Recently, I was with my wife. We were heading to the library to get some literature out, and it took me almost 3 hours to walk about 5 blocks because people jumped on me to talk politics, and they weren't just talking libertarian; they were talking overall politics. Good for you. And to engage them one-to-one, I'll be in a store and people look at me and they'll go, "You're that guy," you know. And I'm like, yeah, and they're like, well, you're normal. And I said, well, I wouldn't go that far, but it's nice to have that recognition as well, where people will stop me. They'll talk business, they'll talk politics, they'll talk personal, you know, and it's nice to have that relationship with the public. And I think that if elected, I can be that strong voice that they need as well.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to wrap it. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And on Election Central Brantford, you know, Rob's our final interview, and we've been having a great time with Rob. And so please check out all our candidates, check them out, call them, get involved. Just like Rob was saying, get involved. You know, like really, that's all we request. It's just people get involved, know what the issues are, know what your issues are, and you know, like you said, you can transform those conversations. Like the guy at the picket line, all of a sudden realized he's actually more in line with you than the others. Right. So, you know, so thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having us. This is an awesome public service that the Fat Panda and Stephen do to this community. It helps the public get involved and understand their candidates. This is probably, again, last year I ran municipally and provincially at the same time. I was a dual candidate. This time being federal, I have the utmost respect for you guys. I think that this is an awesome way to get people in connection with their candidates.
Yeah, and we still talk about your praises all the time. We talk about your conversations because really, you're a forward-thinking man. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Positive thinking.
Positive thinking.
Plus positive reaction always equals a positive outcome. October 19th, I ask for the support, trust, and vote. Thank you.
Can't say it any better than that. Thank you. We'll see you soon.